Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and it's Thursday. So for the ACSOM Bulletin on a Thursday, we are joined by JP Mason and Declan McConville. Welcome back, guys. I was just saying there, it's been a quick week, JP. A quick week in the world of Celtic, and everybody who has managed to watch their way through 4 bulletins in a row with me presenting, I've got to say to you, you won't have to suffer that for much longer. Some of our other hosts will be back very, very soon. So watch this space. I was just saying to you guys, between the pair of you, you've travelled all over the world watching Celtic. Tonight's a big European game. There's loads to discuss, about the lineup, about where Celtic are in terms of European stature and aspirations. But before we do that, let's have a wee chat about some of your away days. I'll start with yourself, JP. You've travelled all over watching Celtic. What kind of memories are you looking back on in preparation for tonight's game?
Hazy. They're always hazy, but they're great fun. I was in Copenhagen last year, so it was in the last one that we had that was, before all this chaos started. So didn't really know what was happening. I still don't know if the beer in the Parkin Stadium was alcoholic or non-alcoholic. That is now
I don't know either.
That's a debate that is going to keep on raging because nobody actually knows. It certainly, I certainly felt that was pretty Stephen.
Was it a placebo? Who knows?
Might be. But I have to say, on a personal level, I'm absolutely gutted to not be in Seville right now doing this broadcast. Potentially from a hotel in Seville or something like that, or a hotel balcony or something, because it's so annoying that we're not quite there yet in terms of equilibrium with this virus and travel and everything else. And I know some people have gone, and it didn't really cross my mind to go because it's not really a proper Celtic away trip when there's only like a smattering of fans and you've not got a proper away support, and you're having to sit in the home end. I sat in the home end in Anderlecht when we beat them. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do is to sort of contain my excitement at the fact that we were winning in the Champions League, something I'd never seen before. So I don't think I would enjoy that too much. So it's a shame, especially when it's Seville and it's somewhere that we've not been in competitive terms since that night. And I was only in Seville for about 6 or 7 hours, so I didn't get to experience the city. And and apparently it's an amazing place, and I hope to see it again one day. But unfortunately, it's not going to be tonight.
It is unfortunate, but it is always good to look back. I've seen quite a lot of people posting their photos on their social media pages, showing that obviously they are on their way to the game. They won't be able to see the game, but they're soaking up the atmosphere, I'm sure, in some of the local bars. Before I ask you your thoughts, Lord Cthulhu, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm sure it's not, who's a long-time watcher of A Celtic State of Mind, isn't doing so well at the moment, and we hope that he gets well soon. I hope you're tuning in and you can enjoy the game tonight. Declan, for one so young, you have done a bit of travelling about on your away days. What is it about the European away days that you love? I know that there's certain people that travel for all various reasons, but what is it about the away days that you enjoy travelling around Europe, Declan?
I like city breaks, and going away with Celtic, you get to see places you maybe wouldn't get to see all so often. My first one was to Munich in 2017, and then I kind of got the bug ever since. So since then, I've been to Italy, I've been to Spain, and I've been to Denmark. So I've got a couple in the bag so far. Been some great times away. Got to see Celtic win an Italian solo for the first time and whatnot. And like JP, I was in Copenhagen just before COVID really struck. But France is another country. Sorry to any French listeners out there. I've been to France as well. So yeah, it's always good to get away. I like city breaks, and as I say, you get to see some places you wouldn't get to see, and it's always a good atmosphere when you go anywhere away with Celtic. So yeah, it's always a good sit, and it's always enjoyable. So I've got the European Celtic bug, and like JP, I'm gutted that not away to Seville, but I was in Valencia the last time we played in Spain. Probably a bit different atmosphere maybe to this. The Spanish police in Valencia weren't too kind to us, but I hope everybody that's made the trip over has a good trip, and if any of them can get tickets to the game tonight, I think that's highly unlikely due to I think it's balloted at this moment in time, and there's still limited capacity in Spain. But anybody that's made the trip, I hope they enjoy themselves.
We'll keep an eye out for him, Declan, because even when Celtic were locked out at Ibrox the first time back in the 1990s, there were a few Celtic fans in there. So there's always, where there's a will, there is a way, JP. And actually, when we put that out on the bulletin a couple of months ago, when we were talking about the then upcoming Ibrox clash, a few people contacted us on Facebook and says, it was me. I was in the crowd. Unbelievable. I don't think they're willing to come on the show, but it would be a good chat if they were. But it brings back the memories of Seville. And, you hear, obviously what happens is media types try and track down somebody who was involved in the Celtic side, and O'Neill's been talking about it. Massive disappointment, reaching our third European final. But I think that it is relevant to talk about it. Not just because of the memories that we've got about it, but it's always good to look at where we are on a European level compared to back then when we were reaching a European final. Obviously, there has been a third tier of European football introduced this season. JP had a good discussion yesterday with Kevin Graham, who's been saying for a long time we're a Europa League club in terms of what we can achieve on the football park. Where are you with all this? I mean, you talk about what Celtic did back in the 60s and into the 1970s, and it was an incredible run of campaigns that we had in European football. But if you talk to some of the old heads, they say, well, if you had spoken to us in 1965 and told us we would have won the European Cup, we would have thought you were off your head. It's different now. The world has changed. The world of football has changed. And we've been kind of priced out and edged out of the Champions League running. But you would hope a club like Celtic should still have aspirations to be playing in the group stages of that competition, JP.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, football just changed so much, and the money that's involved in football now has meant that a club like Celtic, who don't bring in anywhere near the revenue that other clubs bring in when you're talking Champions League, then I mean, you saw what happened to us, and I know we maybe went in with a bit of a gung-ho attitude in the games against Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona, but we got absolutely scalped. I mean, the distance between us and those clubs was never more, marked than the results in those games. I mean, I was in Paris the night we got beat 7-1, and it was. I never thought I would see Celtic lose 7-1. I'm sure there's a lot of Scottish fans of other clubs who were reveling in that, and the fact that we were getting our proverbial rears handed to us on a platter in the Parc des Princes. Given that we've done it to so many teams over here, I've seen Celtic win 7-1 at Motherwell, for example. Arsenal scored 4, but so to be on the receiving end of a 7-1 was quite bizarre, and it didn't make me feel comfortable, and it made me feel even more appreciative of the fact that I did actually see Celtic play in a European final. But I don't think people think I'm talking nonsense, but I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that we could do something like that again. You only need to look at last night for a success story in Jack Hendry going up against Mbappe, Neymar and Messi in the Champions League. Who would have ever thought that Jack Hendry, the much maligned Jack Hendry, would be lining up for Club Brugge in a Champions League match? So football's a strange game, and by the way, I was really pleased for Jack Hendry that he was in that team.
Let's talk about Jack Hendry. I mean, in relation, JP, just to the mental strength of someone in his shoes, and I'm going back probably to not just the disappointment at Celtic, but he goes over to Australia and he has a terrible injury over in Australia. At that point, he must have been at rock bottom, and you compare that to what he did last night. Incredible.
Oh, no, 100%. I didn't see the game. I've read a bit of blurb about it though, and apparently he held his own and was a major reason in the fact that it ended 1-1 and not 7-1. Do you know what I mean? So, in fact, the interesting was I wonder if Jack Hendry was even in or around the squad at the time that we lost 7-1. Was he even signed? I can't remember my stats.
I think he came in the January 2018, so I don't think he'd been signed by that point.
Yeah, but it's a pretty bizarre, it's a pretty sort of stark analogy to sort of compare the fact that he was with a club that got horsed 7-1 at the Parc des Princes, and last night he was with a club that got a point off Paris Saint-Germain. So what a progression in his sort of football trajectory in the last few years. And it's not an accident. It's not as if people were covering for him or anything like that. He was a starting centre half against Paris Saint-Germain. He wasn't a bit part player. He wasn't brought on with 5 minutes to go. He started that game. So yeah, but I think as much as football has changed, and it would maybe, you look at Villarreal. Villarreal won Europa League, and I know Villarreal are a strong team in the Spanish league, or a strong-ish team in the Spanish league. To look at a template like that would make you think we could do it again. And I know that might be sheer folly to say that, especially live on air on something that will be forever on YouTube. But I don't think it's, if we get the right mix and the right magic and formula, then I don't think it's beyond it. With our support as well. If it's in normal times, where we have that powerful away support, you look at what the away support did at places like Blackburn and Celta Vigo, Anfield. There was as much a part of the support that believed as the team. It wasn't like we were turning up to Anfield thinking we were going to get horsed. We were turning up to Anfield thinking we could get a result.
You've made a few points that we'll dip in and out of, because this show is so fluid at the moment, because there's so many reasons why certain things haven't been done at Celtic. So you then have to start talking about the boardroom exploits and where we are in that respect. European aspirations is massive, because I says to Kevin yesterday, season ticket holder, we got our first season tickets in the same season, the Hampden season, Kevin and I, although we didn't know each other and we sat in different areas of the park. I asked him what are Celtic's aspirations in Europe, and he didn't know. And I think that then bleeds into the engagement issue, which is a communication issue. And then you start talking about the club modernising, so that there might be an occasion, JP, within our lifetimes that we are competing. And the conversation yesterday went through the process of basically asking the reason why. Because not only, right, okay, you might say winning a European trophy is a pipe dream. Let's say that is what a lot of people are thinking watching this show. Well, it's a pipe dream if you can't get your house in order. It's a pipe dream if you go into the qualifiers underprepared, as we did again this season. I would love to have seen in the last 10 years Celtic going into these games fully prepared with the full complement of players, so that you're not using the transfer window that you're currently in to try and assemble your team. You're doing it the 3 or 4 transfer windows beforehand, so that when you get to that point, you are fully prepared. We weren't prepared this season.
Like a snooker move, basically. It's just, you're always thinking 3 steps ahead of where you're going to be on the base.
Well, as I say, we'll dip in and out. It's difficult sometimes to keep a rigid structure to these bulletins, because there's so much happening with Celtic. And as I say, everything affects everything else. So, Declan, I'm a very optimistic person, and I look at the situation where I'm looking at this group, and I still think Celtic can qualify. I think we can qualify for the knockout stages. And some people might think I'm off my head to say that. I'm the type of person that goes into tonight's game and I'm looking at how will we line up to get a result tonight. I don't think about damage limitation with Celtic. I never have done. I just think that I would never be in that frame of mind, that state of mind, to expect us to go out and not get a result in some way, shape or form. JP makes a tremendous point. Last night, Club Brugge came up against an absolute embarrassment of riches. You've got a player there in Jack Kendry who was much maligned, as he says. That meme of him going for a wee wander at Firhill will be shown forevermore. But we have come in contact with players like Hendry, who's up against some of the best players in Europe last night and doing well. We have been in contact with players like Virgil van Dijk, who went on to win the European Cup, as I still call it, because I'm old-fashioned. I still call Arsenal Stadium Highbury. That's how old-fashioned I am. And, what it's about being able to get your recruitment sorted, being able to work on a youth development programme that means that we are rearing our own youth, not only for the benefit of Celtic, but also when the time comes to do what we did with Kieran Tierney. There's a player in Tierney whose next move Declan, will make him the most expensive Scottish footballer in the history. And that's a guy that we produced. There's a player that just a few seasons ago was playing for us. But there's huge issues. And I think one of the biggest ones, Declan, is a lack of real ambition and vision on the club's part in relation to European football. I mean, what do you see being the major changes Celtic need to make, Declan, so that we can go into a game tonight not expecting to win because that's complacent, but knowing that you are well enough equipped to be thinking we could get a result tonight?
I think, firstly, to touch on last night, a lot of us don't think we're a Champions League team, and that's due to what we've watched the past. We've not heard Champions League music at Celtic Park since December 2017, and a 1-0 defeat to Anderlecht. And when you tear that apart, look at last night, a team from Moldova and FC Sheriff beating Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, if you get Donetsk in any draw, whether it be in Europa League, Champions League, whatever, we'd be worried. And when you start to look at clubs like that, there's other clubs that you can look at models. If you go way back to when Ronnie Dyla's Malmo side put us out to go into the competition, Athens putting us out to go into the competition. There's models in which you can really put your stamp on your team as a whole in terms of what direction you're wanting to go in. And I think Celtic's problem in the past 10 years has been an obsession with domestic football and taking their eye completely off the ball in European football. Now, it's fine to want to win domestically, but if you can get to a standard and a level of European football, domestic football should just take care of itself. Because if you can go up and compete against top European sides, get your house properly in order, get your recruitment bang on, you've made numerous points, Paul, about money that Celtic has wasted over the past 10 years plus, and players that just haven't hit the grade, but we've spent good money on them. If you get your recruitment in order and be prepared, I think even if you look at coming off the back of an invincible treble in 2016-17 season, we went into that qualifying campaign of the Champions League playing near Beto on its centre half. So even at that point, when you'd probably say Celtic was the strongest that it had been in that 10-year period, they were still short. Yeah. So unless you can really nail down your starting 11 and go in and you're adding a player to the side, I get Celtic's business model is to sell on and then reinvest in a squad, but you can do that and get your recruitment right. It's not, it's not too difficult to do. The people in the boardroom, the person that's left the boardroom, and Peter Lowell was getting a good wage to do that. And, they've not left anything that you could say really has put that in place to do. So in terms of the whole structure of the club, we're only going to be a successful European side if we put everything in order. And again, if you look at the upheaval that we've had in this transfer window, just looking at on paper, trying to qualify for the Champions League was a complete, miracle dream that you could have imagined. But this season, we've got a chance with the new competition in the conference that even if we don't finish in the top two in this group, we should at least be finishing third. Now, that is no disrespect to Ferencváros. It was a side that, played well when they came to Celtic Park. Again, leaving ourselves short for that game because the day after it, we announced David Turnbull. But again, another story of just wait. Mm-hmm. So, and again, I think there's a stat, I don't know if it's 16 or 17 years that we've not won a tie after Christmas. Obviously, we've won games, but not an actual tie, put a team out. So, there is sides that we'll come up against that will just be naturally better than us. That's fine. But at times, there has been points and places that you can look at and say, well, at least one or two of those times Celtic should have get past us. And 16, 17 years not to win after Christmas is it's sad for a team like Celtic. And I know people will say, if you look through the 80s and the 90s, whatever, Celtic never really did anything in Europe, but the game's changed. There's opportunities there as we're coming up against sides that probably we should be beating. Again, it's no disrespect to teams in Europe, but in terms of the whole structural problem at Celtic, that is why I don't think we're at that level to be anywhere near a Champions League side just now.
There's some great points you've made, and it actually goes back on a point that was brought up yesterday or the day before. And we actually had someone coming on and saying, all you've done is speak about the boards. And that wasn't the case in actual fact. I think we'd spent about 10 minutes. But I mean, there's been big stories in relation to the Celtic board. Therefore, we will have to speak about it. But for anyone who doesn't think it all joins up to what you actually watch in a football park, it would be remiss of us not to speak about goings on at Celtic, because if you want to build a structure within a football club that allows you to go into games like tonight with some kind of chance of getting a result and competing at this level, then it starts from the top down. I mean, that's obvious. There was also a very popular broadcast stroke podcast going on about criticising Celtic fans because no other football club speaks about the board as much as Celtic fans. Well, for good reasons. I mean, you could ignore what's happening behind the scenes, but we've all seen what happens if you just ignore it. You know, it never ever ends well if you just ignore what's happening behind the scenes. But I think that if Celtic were to get their house in order, because it hasn't been for a number of years, in relation to having aspirations for the Champions League, then we could certainly be punching at our weight. I don't think we're punching at our weight. That's my biggest frustration. We've been talking about Seville, and I remember it was after the Invincible treble, Declan, and I don't know if you were at this night, but we done a night with Grab Douglas. It was in Greenock, and we do a thing at the end, or we did a thing at the end where at a half-time break, everybody would write down their questions. It would come in at the back, and all the dodgy ones had to go to one side, and then Rab Douglas would answer a selection of questions in the second half to the people who were there to see him. And it was always good fun. And Rab Douglas was asked the question about the Invincible team in comparison to the Seville team. And he basically got asked who would get in that side. That's what he was asked. Now, I'm going to throw it out to you to see what your thoughts are on that. So if you compare that Seville side, JP, and I know that people are saying you can't compare two teams from two different eras, etc., etc., etc. But if I'm looking back on some teams I was fond of and I enjoyed watching, the Tommy Burns side, problem is a goalie. Never had a decent goalie, the Tommy Burns. And for me, the Martin O'Neill side, problem is the goalkeeper. Personally, no disrespect to anybody who played in goals because they were better in goals than I was, but I honestly think that was the issue with those two teams. JP, if you're looking at that Seville side, you're comparing it to the Invincible side, who gets in?
Definitely KT, 100%. I'm putting KT in that side. I mean, how could you not? Like Kieran Tierney playing in a European final for Celtic. Yeah, I definitely have him. Keeper, possibly Craig Gordon. I mean, people scoff at that, but I don't know. I think Craig Gordon at that level at that time might have been a better option than Rab Douglas himself. So I would be a bit harsh to say that to Rab Douglas in person.
I certainly wouldn't say it to him in person.
No, I definitely wouldn't either.
You seen the size of their hands? I mean, backhander, that's all it would take.
I met him in a shop of a petrol station in about 2001, 2002, something like that. And he signed my Dundee United ticket from the game that he played that day. And yeah, he is a massive guy. So aye, maybe edit that out. I know that can't happen now, but I all this comparisons of teams, like, I mean, it's completely different football and times and everything else. I think starting to pick and choose, you know, that Seville team is immortal for me, and that's when I was going to, you know, every single game, home and away, you know, domestically and whatever I could get to in Europe as well. So, you know, you're talking Henrik Larsson, Chris Sutton, Paul Lambert, Stilian Petrov. You know, these guys are undroppable. You know, I don't care what anybody's done in the modern era. Those guys are undroppable to me. They're my, sounds a bit mad to say it, but they're my Lisbon Lions, you know, because, you know, they're the guys that I idolised when I was a wee guy. And, you know, they are to what older guys to me or girls to me are the Lisbon Lions to them, you know. But they actually went one step further and won the biggest trophy on offer. It was something that Declan said there about the obsession with domestic football. And it got me thinking about a Kevin Graham parallel universe. And I was thinking, what would have happened if Rangers hadn't gone under, right? Where would we be in terms of how many Champions Leagues would we have qualified for if Rangers had still been Rangers, you know, all that time, you know, all the last 10 years? It would be interesting to see a parallel universe where we didn't have that foothold on domestic competitions and we didn't have the kind of cakewalk to a title that we did, you know, more often than not. because the board would have been forced into spending more money and keeping up with the whatever they were spending over the city. So I think that's an interesting one to think. Where would we be European football wise and Champions League qualification wise in the last 10 years without this 9 in a row / 10 in a row that didn't happen. We know that. That's an interesting one.
It is, because then complacency sets in. You do as much as you need to do, as we've said in the past. Declan, do you want to have a go? You want to have a stab at that? Who gets in the Seville side? Because JP's already got himself an enemy in Rab Douglas.
I don't know, because if you bring KT into the side, you're probably dropping Alan Thompson for him, and Thompson was a big part of that team that season. And actually, one of the times I spoke to Rab Douglas, even though he's the guy that gets a hard time for Seville, one of the things he said to me was, people went on my back when I kept a clean sheet at Anfield, and he would park as well. So I think as a collective, it's hard to start to pick and choose. I mean, there'd be an argument maybe for Scott Brown to get into that Seville team for our former manager, Neil Lennon, in terms of his form in that treble season. But again, you're picking apart a side that together was a collective, and you don't know what could happen if you stick, that back three of Mialbi, Baldi and Valharin. You don't really want to start breaking that up, and even the midfield as well, and Lambert, Petrov, Thompson in there, Lennon and Agat on the right hand side. So I think it'd be very difficult to pick it apart. Certainly none of the two strikers would get dropped. But in terms of maybe form, Brunei or KT would be maybe the two shouts. But I don't think any of the two would probably get into the team, just for the fact that side was so powerful and dominant. And then you're leaving Jackie McNamara, obviously never started in Seville either, so he's not on that team either. Neither's John Hart to start. So nah, I don't think anybody makes it.
Interesting. Big Rab said that the goalkeeper would make it. That's what he said, and I'm glad he said it. But we are going to have a look at tonight's team, because we've spoken about this inability to get yourself organised, and I know that it's quite an unprecedented kind of time for Celtic going into this season with the manner of the change. Although we had plenty of time to try and start that change earlier than we did. You look at the January transfer window, guys. We were very inactive in the January transfer window, and then we're wondering why. Tonight's bench is going to be probably one of the youngest benches we've had in many's a year, and we're going to look at that. So we've asked the question, who captains Celtic, because yesterday we were given the bombshell that McGregor's out. He's a player that I think this season has shown once again he's one of the most important, if not the most important players at Celtic at this moment in time. One of the first comments that came in today, Alan Boyne reckons that Hart has to be the captain tonight. So let's start with Joe Hart. He's an absolute definite first pick. He's come in and he's solved a major headache for Celtic. And there's certain other things. I think you can probably hear me, but there's a loose connection and we're unable to see me at the minute, but that's fine. We'll get that sorted out. So Joe Hart for captain. We'll start off with the captain. JP, would you go with that? Joe Hart for captain? Yeah,
100%. I know the Drogic. I only watched Saturday's game last night. I watched a rerun of it last night because I was working on Saturday and I wasn't able to get to the game, which was really frustrating because missing anything at the moment after 18 months of no game is quite annoying. But work comes first, and I was occupied with work, so I missed it. But I watched it last night. So did the captain's armband get initially handed to Rogic, and then when Rogic went off, it went to Hart? Is that am I right thinking that right?
Yeah.
The natural order of it would be that Rogic would start, but start with the captaincy if he indeed starts tonight. But I would rather Rogic. I mean, he doesn't seem like a captain to me. No disrespect to him, but it's just that doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to rile everybody up, and you can't really imagine him in a huddle giving it Scott Brown like pointing whatever Scott Brown was saying. So I would rather it went to Hart, because I think Hart has one more experienced, more seems like the complete natural guy to be the captain when McGregor's not there. And I know not everybody's a fan of a keeper being a captain, but I think tonight in particular, with that side that's going to go out, you need the voice coming from the back, not from the so yeah, I would, and just the way that Joe Hart's been since he signed him, he's changed my opinion of him. I always just thought he was a bit of a, a kind of a prat, really, without being too offensive. I saw somebody shared a picture of him the other day on Twitter of some gear he was wearing on a night out, and it was the worst. I don't think he was wearing it in an ironic fashion either. He was actually wearing it with a straight face. It was like polka dot, like multicolored polka dots or whatever. If it didn't, if that turns out to be a fancy dress night out and I've got it wrong, fine. But if that was his actual gear, then maybe my opinion of him as a prat is justified. But now, the way that he's spoken, the way he's conducted himself, I'm not too sure he's taken the massive wage cut that a lot of people say that he has. I don't think he's on, as paltry quote unquote wages as he might well be on. Regardless of that, I don't really care about that. It's more about how he speaks, and he's clearly, into Celtic and into the moment, and probably could have earned more money elsewhere. But he's come up here, and yeah, it seems a no-brainer to me.
There's two things happened here. I think that it solved two issues. There's been a real turnaround, really, for Celtic insofar as the goalkeeper situation was a big issue, and that, I think, bled into the defensive, as it naturally would, situation that we were in. So that problem seems to have been solved. But there's also, when you look at Joe Hart and where his career was going, yeah, I mean, he's at Spurs. He's maybe the third choice, and he's on a big wage. Everybody thinks there's worse things in life than that. Absolutely. But for any footballer with ambition to play and still to achieve anything in the game, he's really turned it round. And I think that we've seen a couple of occasions where, he's done the things that you tend to take for granted when you've got a good shot stopper. And someone like Craig Gordon, who you've mentioned before, some of the shots that he stopped were incredible for Celtic. Then we've gone through a process of trying to get that in 3 different goalies last season. None of them were up to the mark. Joe Hart's given us it, but he's also turned his own career around, because it seemed to have been kind of like tapering off. He's got European experience. I think tonight will be late 70s in terms of appearances in European football. Plenty of experience on an international level. Declan, it would be incredible after a handful of games if he's leading Celtic in tonight as the captain. Do you think that will be Ange Postecoglou's go-to man?
From Saturday, I thought the natural order would have probably been, Tom Rogic, but the more you think about it, I think Joe Hart's actually also captained England as well as Man City, so he's taken on the captaincy before and taking on the responsibility. So I just don't know. I think Tom Rogic, I've always described him as a luxury player, and sometimes he turns up for you, sometimes he doesn't. And if he's having a bit of a stinker, which every footballer has, he might not be the most inspiring of figures. And again, I think a lot of the time tonight, we're going to have our backs to the wall a bit, and I think somebody in there shouting with the captain's armband watching the game, and Joe Hart to organise the team, especially due to how short we are, is maybe what we need. And it's testament to Joe Hart for what he's did when he's come up here. A lot of players come into the league and like Joey Barton, Shane Duffy, whatnot, that just don't hit it at all where he's came in. If you look at his saving Saturday when it's 1-0 and the header, it looks as if it was just a cert to go in, and it's a great save and it could have changed the game. But saves like that are defining points and gaining 3 points and sometimes in your season. So I think it would be a reward for Joe Hart and everything that he's done. I know one mistake away to Alkmaar, but again, he made some great saves after that on the night. So I think it'd be a just reward for Joe Hart for what he's done since arriving at Celtic. Yeah,
it would be. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. We're over 1,000 live, and that's healthy on a daily basis for a Celtic State of Mind to go out on various platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube. And thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat as well. If you're watching on YouTube, get involved by subscribing, hit the notification bell, like the video, and drown out all the noise from fans of other teams who come on to try and disrupt the progress of the broadcast by giving us a thumbs down before we even start and all that kind of stuff. If you do subscribe, you're in for monthly prizes, monthly giveaways, music related, Celtic related, everything we can get our hands on, we will give it away. Signed memorabilia, signed tops, framed things like this, the Three Kings. It's sent up by Johnny Owen himself, big Celtic fan Johnny, and he sent us a few of these posters up. We've had them framed, we'll give them away. So get subscribing on that channel. Let's have a wee chat then, JP, about the defensive situation. That was the biggest worry when we went into the game against Midtjylland, both games. And we've got issues again tonight. This is mainly down to injury. Ralston's back. How do you line up? I mean, do you start as we did at Ibrox? Do you bring Montgomery in at left back? There's a few different things that we could do this evening. What do you think Postecoglou will do with the back four?
I guess. Well, we were all kind of speculating. Well, we were, me and you, speculating last week that Liam Scales might have started on Saturday against Ross County, and he didn't. So I don't know where he's at in terms of fitness, because he wasn't on the bench on Saturday. Is that right? He's not been near a squad yet at all, which is, whatever. I don't know why. I don't know what the reasons is, but I mean, he's obviously fit because he was playing for Shamrock Rovers a couple of weeks ago. So it's not as if he's not played football for ages or anything like that. So I would like to think that he would be considered or an option for tonight if he's available. And there's not any COVID, God forbid, there's any sort of COVID problems with him. But I mean, he was doing interviews and stuff like that. Did Kev not interview him?
Kev, it was, yeah.
So, I don't know why he's not. Maybe somebody does know. I'm sure there'll be somebody somewhere that knows.
There's a couple, though, JP, like that near Beaton. The aforementioned near Beaton's not been in squads.
I think he's injured. I heard that from somewhere.
Postecoglou did say there was 3 or 4 that were around about the same.
Yeah. When he was talking about Giacomakis. I've been pulled up for my pronunciation of Giacomakis because I keep calling him Giacomakis. So I do take the feedback. There you go. He was talking about Giacomakis and he says there was 2 or 3 at the same level, wasn't
he?
Yeah, I would go with Juranovic. I wouldn't. I'm not into this playing Juranovic at left back. Patter. I would rather have either Montgomery, because I thought he looked all right on Saturday when he came up. I know that's against Ross County and blah blah blah, but I still think he looks composed enough and confident enough, and what a boost to his confidence that would be playing him tonight. So there's him or Scales. I would rather see either of them play than Juranovic at left back. I would continue. Juranovic played on Saturday. Yeah, he made a couple of not mistakes, but there was a couple of moments where he didn't look maybe as clever as he should have. But I would play Juranovic tonight because he played in a winning side on Saturday. So why would you just drop the guy? Because Ralston's been out. So play Juranovic, and then obviously centre half. I thought Cameron Carter-Vickers looked. The distribution of his passing was the thing that impressed me most. I know he's a big guy, and it's good to have a bit of physicality in the defence for once, because we've had that for a long time. But I really thought he was good on the ball, and his passing was confident and quite crisp, and always found a man. Didn't he look flustered? He's got a relationship with Hart as well from Spurs, so that would be a no-brainer. And Starfelt again, didn't put a foot wrong, I don't think either. Again, I know it's the opposition and everything else, but you need to give these guys games together to build a rapport.
You're talking about the opposition, and again, we keep saying it is no disrespect, but we were dominant in Scottish football for 9 seasons on the bounce, and you're going into a lot of these games against clubs that probably end up in the bottom 4 or 5 season in, season out, JP, yet we still weren't given enough game time to younger players like Montgomery or Welsh or Ralston even. I mean, Ralston, if you look at his game time over a period of 5 years, was minimal. He hadn't played a lot of games. I mean, he's only now, I don't even think he's played 30 games for Celtic over a 5-year period. And when you're coming up against teams that, particularly in the latter half of the season, who I'm not saying you would expect to win against, but if you're playing at home against Hamilton Accies or Ross County or players, teams of that ilk, and I appreciate that Ross County beat us last season. I'm talking when we're dominating the Scottish game. That's when you get game time into these young players, because we should not be in a position as we were last season. We were throwing Stephen Welsh into a game against Rangers and he's only played one first team game. Dane Murray getting thrown in against Midtjylland, never played a game. So I think it's a good point, and it's not a disrespectful point, that there are opportunities during a season in Scottish football where these young guys need to get game time. We'll come back to it when we look at what might be Celtic's bench tonight, because you've got to find, fill 9 jerseys on that bench. And when you look at the Europa League squad that Celtic have, and with the injuries that we've had, it's going to be a very, very young and inexperienced bench. I'm going to bring up a good point IH Decorating's made in relation to where we are as a club. And it's on evenings like tonight that the inept management of the club over the last 2 years comes home to roost. Another high-profile game we're desperately ill-prepared for. I think what we can do is we can put a team on that park tonight, and it'll be a strong team. And you know what? I might get criticised, or I might look back on this tomorrow and say that was a daft thing to say. I think we can put a team on the park tonight that can get a result. But if anything happens during that 90 minutes, and we've seen it time after time and after time, a beat on sending off or somebody pulling up injured, we don't have that depth of squad on the bench on tonight of all nights, the opening game of our group stage in Europe, just like the opening game of our European campaign, ill-prepared. So yeah, it is a good point, not to put a negative slant on things, because I'm looking forward to tonight's game. What are you doing in the defence? Because I'm more inclined, looking at the team that I've written down here, I would actually bring back Tony Ralston. And as much as I hate playing players out of position, there's a reason behind this when you look at the midfield, because I would start Montgomery, but I wouldn't start him at left back. I'd put Juranovic at left back, and I would play with Starfelt and Carter Vickers in the centre of defence. Declan, how are you lining up your defence, mate?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Paul. As a back four, the only reason I wouldn't play Montgomery at left back, actually watched the started at left back on Saturday, is because I think we're going to need to play him in the left wing, because we're so short, and we're going to need to switch Jota out to the right hand side. He said that he can play across any position in the front three. Again, I'm not a fan of wanting to play players out of position, but we don't have a right winger for this game, and we're going to need to move Jota over there, meaning that we're going to need a left winger. We don't have a left winger for this game, so we're going to need to play Montgomery up on that side. So the two fullbacks, as much as I would prefer, Juranovic to be in his natural position and Jota to be in his right natural position, we are desperately short up front tonight. So that's the back four, and that's the reason why I would go with Juranovic out of position at left back and Ralston back into the team.
That's my thinking, JP, because I'm looking at the wide areas, and on the right hand side we've got Abada who's out for religious reasons. We've got Forrest who's not yet fit. We've got a bad injury to young Dembele, which is really frustrating for everybody, because I think this is a season that we probably didn't expect to have him by this stage, because his career stagnated under Neil Lennon, absolutely, without a doubt, as did a few other players. But then during the pre-season, we got a wee bit of a glimpse of what Dembele could do, and then he gets that terrible ankle injury. So yeah, we're probably having to play Jota on the right-hand side. Of course, the other option would be you play Juranovic there, because he can play on the right-hand side a wee bit further up the park. He's done it before. And you play Montgomery on the left back area. With on the left-hand side, for me, I would play Montgomery. Then you're looking at who plays your number 10. And again, I'm going to throw mine out there. I'm going to start with Tom Roderick. I know he didn't play particularly well against Ross County, but I think a lot of that was down just to fatigue, the travelling around with international games, etc. And I would start with Roderick. I wouldn't expect him to finish the game. So that would be where I would be playing him. And then my midfield two, which again is another big question, because McGregor is out, and we spoke yesterday about this. I know it's not ideal, but I would give James McCarthy his first start in a Celtic jersey. I think his experience would certainly get him through the game. Whether or not he's fit enough to finish the game, I don't know. But you've got Sorrow on the bench. And I would actually play Turnbull as a number 8. I'd be playing McCarthy as my number 6. What do you reckon? I mean, there's not even a question about forward because we've only got one. So Yeti plays up front. So what do you reckon, JP, in terms of your midfield and your forward areas?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that Yeti scored at the weekend because I was quite vocal last Thursday saying that I thought he should start because of the order of things, and I just thought if a lot of people were sort of campaigning for Giakoumakis, is that the right pronunciation?
Apparently so.
But a lot of people
I normally go by Jerry McCulloch with the intro, the introductory interview, and I write it down as I say it. That's what I normally do.
Well, a lot of people were clamoring for him to be to start on Saturday, and nobody was that fussed about a Yeti going, "Oh, the guy's not done anything in a year, he's a waste of space, blah blah blah." And I was like, yeah, but he's one of our strikers on our books, and as I said last week, we need, to look after him in a way, because if we just bomb him out and don't consider him for games like Ross County at home on Saturday, which by the way I did also say last week would be a good marker of how we've progressed in a year. And we didn't even play that well on Saturday, and we won 3-0. And last season we got beat. Did we not get beat twice off Ross County, the Cup and the League? Yeah. We did.
Because Big Yogi came in, didn't he? And he beat us as well.
And Yogi was being hailed as some sort of tactical genius. I mean, I love him, but he's not a tactical genius. Like, it just was up against that.
This is a diversion, JP. Sorry, just while you've brought it up, wouldn't he be, and I know that Peter Grant's in a job at the moment, don't you think he'd be a good fit for Dunfermline?
Yogi?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's happening there. A lot of people didn't have much confidence in Peter Grant when he got the Dunfermline job. So the fact that he's not doing that well now is a shame, because, well, guy's a hero to me. He was my first. Him and Paul McStay. So I'm sure Yogi, if he wants to get a job, will get a job somewhere or other at a decent level, because he is a good manager, but he's not. I don't think he tactically outmastered us last season. I just think we were at such a low ebb, and it was a sad state of affairs where we were. But we won 3-0 on Saturday. A Yeti scored. That's given him confidence again. You could see when he scored the goals that he was, it wasn't a get it up here to the fans or anything like that. He wasn't doing a Lee Griffiths and shouting at Chris Boyd in the TV gantry or anything like that. He was just, you could tell he was just happy to have scored and, celebrated with his teammates. There was a camaraderie there, and you want to take that into tonight. And thank God he scored those 2 goals on Saturday, because we need a confident striker tonight, as he's the only one we've got. And, if he gets an opportunity, he needs to take it tonight, whatever that may be. Because, he had a chance on Saturday that he kind of scuffed, if you remember that chance.
Yeah, left foot chance, yeah.
And he got put through, and you're thinking, is that going to be the story of his day? And then he scores an absolutely brilliant header. That was a brilliant header. That first goal that he scored from Abada's Ross, to actually twist his neck to get the power on the head, you'd be happy with that at any level. So midfield as well, yeah, I agree with you. I think, it's obviously going to be Rogic that starts. He did kind of fade in the game on Saturday from watching it back last night. So Turnbull's Industry, you'd like to think would do well, and hopefully McCarthy's fit enough to start a game. I mean, that's why we signed him. That's why we gave him a 5-year deal. We didn't sign him just to sort of be in and around the place for banter. We need him to start these type of games. And everybody knew that if McGregor got injured, that was so many people have said that on so many different platforms, that if McGregor was ever to get injured, we're in trouble. Yeah. So here we are, we're in trouble. We need somebody like him to step up to the plate.
Now, your starting lineup, JP, you're starting with Juranovic at right back, aren't you? So what are you doing with the wide areas? Because we're really, really thin on the ground with wingers at the moment.
I mean, we are. I mean, and I didn't even think about that, because obviously I know that Jota can play. I thought he looked good actually as well. I thought he looked lively. I know it was more the first half than the second half that he was sort of in and about it, but he's got a good touch. He liked his 1-2s. Didn't hide from the ball, wanted the ball. So maybe him on the right, and and switching it all about and doing what you're suggesting, playing Juranovic at left back. It might be what he's forced to do rather than what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible state of affairs to be in as a manager. In your first ever Europa League game, you're having to basically roll the dice a little bit in your team selection. I feel for the guy in that sense, because he's kind of starting this game tonight with one hand behind his back, and that's not how you want a guy, especially a guy like him. Where you can tell he's under pressure, and I'm sure he probably feels the weight of what he's expected to do tonight, and not have our pants pulled down, because he'll be well aware from the players that are still there from past seasons, from anybody he spoke to at the club. He'll be well aware that we haven't had a great time of it on the road in Europe over the last however many years. So be desperate to not add to that tonight. And I really hope for his sake, genuinely just really hope for his sake, that he doesn't have to consider tonight an addition to all those horrible experiences we've had away from Europe in the last few years.
I've seen a few things online, because obviously, I mean, you get to know and gauge the feeling amongst Celtic fans on social media these days, and there has been some people suggesting that if this was their start to the season under Neil Lennon, we'd all be up in arms about it. But you can't gauge that because of the circumstances, and I think one of the biggest things, losing two the first few games in the league, getting bounced out the Champions League. Potentially tonight, there's a potential for tonight to end in defeat. I hope it doesn't. But I just think there's so much goodwill in the bank for Ange Postecoglou at the moment, JP. A big part of that is we all appreciate how constrained that he has been in trying to do his job, and actually putting on a strong team on the park. He's brought in 12. He's lost 15 if you include the loanees. And we've been kind of unlucky with some of the injuries. So, whatever happens tonight, I don't think it changes our view of Ange Postecoglou. One of the biggest things that I've seen, it's like you say there, when Ajeti was celebrating his goals, there's a togetherness that I don't think was on show last season. And amongst the players, all we heard about was cliques and people being unhappy at Celtic. I think that's completely evaporated. And I think Ange Postecoglou has been a massive part in that as well. Declan, tell me the rest of your team. How else do you think you'll line up? Because I mean, there's only a few of them that you could disagree with, simply because they're the only players that we've got at the moment. McCarthy, perhaps for Sorrow, would be another option.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same team as you, Paul. Already said the back four. I'd probably want to play McCarthy as an experienced head in midfield tonight. Is it the six? But worried about Sorrow at times. It can be a bit erratic and get booked early on in the game, and I might kind of, shut him out of the game for a long period of time. So I'd probably be more confident playing McCarthy alongside Turnbull and Rogic. Again, we're thinning the ground in there in terms of creative players. We don't really have anything off the bench. We need to turn to a younger player, and then up front, as I say, Yota on the right hand side, Montgomery on the left hand side, and I'll be Ajeti up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, David Kelly, who comes in on a regular basis onto the show, so welcome back, David. Turnbull or Rogic cannot play tonight. Empty shirts in these games. If either play, we will be overrun. We've been going on about an opportunity for Ajeti tonight. I think that Turnbull and Rogic simply need to play tonight, and they need to turn it on tonight. There can be no empty jerseys this evening. My only concern, I guess, is when you get to that 65, 70 minutes, JP, and you're looking at both of those guys, what's the likelihood of both of them finishing the game? And then you're bringing on a player, I guess, like Sorrow, if he's on the bench, to try and see the game out, because I wouldn't expect both of them to play the full 90. But I don't think there's any option, David. I don't think there's an option to not play those two players. Let's have a look. I've got the European squad in front of me just now. When you're looking at the goalkeepers, we've got Barkas, Hart and Bain. Hart will start with the other two on the bench. When you then start looking at the defenders, so obviously Julien injured, Taylor injured, Starfelt will start. Scales, is he going to be on the bench? Who knows? Carter Vickers will start. Urhoghide will probably be on the bench. Dane Murray, he's one of the players that's been playing for the B team as well. Ralston will start. Welsh will be on the bench. And Juranovic will start. Beyond that, because these are the guys with first-team experience, here's the names that we're looking at. We're looking at guys like Ben McPherson, who played in pre-season once, Matthew Anderson, Benny Jackson-Luye, Dylan Corr, Caleb Goldie. Now, don't pretend that you are familiar with all the players, and that's not disrespectful, but basically what it shows is you're dipping into the kind of youth players at that stage. When you look at the midfield, Near Beaton supposedly injured. Kyogo is classed as a midfielder in this group here. Abada's out, Kyogo's out, Soro could be on the bench, McCarthy might start, Rogic, Shaw, I'm guessing would be on the bench, McGregor injured, Forrest injured, Henderson I would expect to be on the bench, and then beyond that you're looking at players like Kerr McInroy, Joseph Murphy, Ben Summers, Ben Wiley, Mackenzie Cars, etc. These are guys that are 17, 16 years of age. Rocco Vata's in there as well. And then up front, we've only got one fit striker. So there's no option whatsoever. So your younger players are Owen Moffat, who is 19 years of age, Brodie Patterson, 20, Adam Brooks, 17. I mean, we're at that stage. We're going to see a very, very young bench tonight. I mean, there's only 5 players there that I'm familiar with of the potential guys on the bench. You're probably going to have 4 17, 18-year-olds who have never been near a first team. That's a worry, JP, isn't it?
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? I mean, when you were reading out those names, they think that, I mean, obviously it's great for those guys, like getting to go on a trip, away with Celtic and be part of that, squad, and, that experience is obviously massive for them. I remember reading about, I think it was Simon Donnelly maybe got to do something similar at one of the World Cup, to go away, and I think Burchell at one point as well got to go away and was never anywhere near the playing field, but got to go away, and they've always cited that as a big kind of moment in their young lives as being like, well, this is what I could get to if I work my socks off. Mm-hmm. So things like that for them as a motivation, but it doesn't really help Celtic in the here and now, though, does it? It's all that's for the future. That's for them. The seeds of tonight for them will be sown, and then we'll maybe see the benefit in 3-4 years' time. But tonight and here and now, we need guys to help us get a result, to help us, get out of this group, because you obviously, it's been that bad in Europe for so long that and after last season, we've got to put right our standing in Europe after last season. We've got to, right the wrong of Sparta Prague at home and Sparta Prague away. Those 2 games embarrassed me as a Celtic fan, and were horrible to watch, especially as the fact that we weren't even there. But we need something to pick us up from that, and just regain a bit of standing, because I'd like to think we have got a good reputation as a club in Europe, but it's taken a hell of a batter in recent times, and none more so than last season. So,
by the way, reading through the names, absolutely no disrespect to those players, but I'll give you an example. 1970 European Cup final against Feyenoord. The entire reserve side was taken along by Jock Stein, the entire squad. They'd won a treble. And the 2 players who were given the job of carrying the hampers, which, by the way, was something that they'd done with pride, was Kenny Dalglish and Danny McGrain. They carried the hampers. The rest of them, it was a holiday. So you're talking about guys like Jimmy Quinn and John Gorman, etc., etc. But Dalglish and McGrain carried the hampers. Now, that's fantastic experience, like you say. You're looking at a team in a European level and how they prepare. And, through watching that, you then get that experience, and you know what to expect in 3 or 4 years' time when maybe it's you that they call upon to represent the club. Under these circumstances, you're taking along players, and everybody on that bench might get some kind of game time if somebody gets injured, because we're so thin on the ground. And if they do, you just hope that they do well, because you want them to develop as players at Celtic. Now, Joseph McGonigal, Moffat, absolutely. Denny Boy Moffat, Owen Moffat looked brilliant in pre-season from what I've seen. He's done really, really well. He's one of the players, Declan, who looks too good for that level that he's playing at the moment with the Colts. If he gets a game tonight, brilliant for his confidence, brilliant for his development. But here's a final wee point by the Urban Coolsey, so welcome back. Flight ticket for Bolo. Isn't it incredible that we've got a player in I almost called him Basil Bolly there. We've got a player in Bolingoli who isn't even in the squad yet. We're talking about playing players out of position just to cover that left back row. It shows you how far he's fallen in the pecking order, Declan.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if you can't think of the amount of money that we actually spent on him from Rapid Vienna only, was that 2 years ago now, 2019, and he's just, after obviously last year's debacle, he's just completely shut out. I mean, he did see him appear in a couple of benches at times, but he's obviously not part of the makeup at all. And again, it's a horrible situation to be in because he's probably in decent money at Celtic, but he's obviously just not part of the manager's plans, or he knows he can't trust him from what's went on before. But it is incredible. I think one player possibly missing that you maybe read out, Paul, was Mikey Johnson, who was spotted in training yesterday. Again, I don't know where he's at fitness-wise, but again, this could possibly be the make or break season for him because this is his big chance. I keep saying that every time, but you know, we've been saying that for, I think he first broke into the team in about 2017, so he's still not really made a big enough impact on me as of yet, but it'd be nice to see him back in the bench tonight.
Well, it would. Yeah, I wasn't aware, actually. I hadn't seen that, Declan. But when you look at Mikey Johnson, he's 22 years of age, so he's the same age as Jota and David Turnbull. You still think of him as a kind of younger player, but that's because he's been in and around the side. But you're right. I think it's now or never for a player like Mikey. I was looking at last season's group stages and who qualified, JP. And other than one group, if you got 10 points, you get through. That's based on last season's. Do you think Celtic are capable of getting 10 points in this group?
Jeez, I mean, who knows? I mean, I just it depends on the rub of the green and how we fare with. I think a fully fit Celtic team. You know, I mean, I'm talking like everybody fit in, you know, in their positions where they should be playing and all that. I think we could have a go at it, and you know, be in or certainly be in the conversation for second place. But the way things are and the way that we're starting off with one hand behind their back tonight, and that's not the way you want to start a European campaign. Especially away from home as well. If we were at home, at least you've got the momentum of the crowd to really, you know, get behind any young boy that has to come on and pick up a jersey if someone was to get injured or you know, if we had to reshuffle for a red card. God forbid, nobody can get red carded tonight. I mean, it just has, everybody's discipline has to be spot on tonight. You know, it goes without saying. But I think, yeah, like away from home in Spain, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. I think it's the old adage: is take it one game at a time and see where we're at in December.
What's your thoughts, Dick? 10 points, too big an ask?
Again, you'll probably be looking at Ferencváros and hoping that you can try and get maximum points against them. But it's going to be tough going to Hungary as well. It's not a stick on to go over there and win. You'd like to think that we'd give Betis and Leverkusen a good go at Celtic Park, but the fans again behind us. But I think what JP said there, it's one game at a time where you're at tonight. We're starting with a squad that is absolutely decimated in terms of what we've got there. You know, but there's still the worry of COVID through these months, coming back from still 2 international breaks to come back from as well. And saying that, it didn't seem to affect Sparta Prague, a COVID outbreak last year when they played us and gubbed us 4-1. So sometimes it can have its benefits, playing young players and giving them a chance, like that Sparta Prague team last year. But I think Europe this year is just one game at a time. See where you're at each time with your squad and just go into the game with the most positive mindset. But I think something I would like to see Celtic do tonight is continue to play our brand of football that we've been playing under Postecoglou. I don't want us to go here to Seville tonight and just sit back and be under the cosh for the whole game. The Alkmaar game was not a nice experience. I said on here before that game, if we get an injury, we'd be in trouble, and we did, and we were in trouble for long spells of that game. But I'd like to see us just at least go to Betis, try and be positive as we can be, and try and play our own brand of football. But I think probably everybody, if you've got a choice between getting a result here or Livingston and Sunday, everybody's taking the result in the plastic. So positive result will do tonight, and a positive performance.
Brilliant. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you again, Declan and JP. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back tonight, 5:15, for the half-hour pre-match preview, and we'll be back at half-time. And at full-time, you'll see appearances tonight from Colin Watt, Kevin Graham, myself, and Amy Canavan. So tune in if you can. Thank you all for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Oh, no, mate.